Hello everybody, this is Jerry Mateo within the DAW. Welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Kiive Audio NFuse. This is the newest plugin from Kiive Audio. They actually reached out to me and sent me a copy of this a little bit early so I can prepare for this video, but they have no say in what I have to say about this plugin. Now, the NFuse is a combination of two different hardware emulations. That is going to be the Rupert Neve Design's Master Bus Transformer and the SSL Fusion. Now, there is going to be some pretty stark differences because Kiive has taken some liberties to enhance and even change some things that might have been less flexible in the original hardware units. For the first thing, the SSL Fusion no longer has the high-frequency compressor. Instead, Kiive has given us an SSL bus compressor with an included sidechain high-pass filter. To be honest, this is going to be a much more useful tool because personally, I don't usually use high-frequency compressors, especially in my bus processing. But we also have a variable amount of frequencies that we can select from, as well as the high-pass filter. So in the original Fusion, you have a high-pass filter of off, 30, 40, and 50 hertz. In this case, Kiive has given us from off all the way to 20 kilohertz in both the Neve and the Fusion. The Fusion also only had 12 dBs of gain. Kiive has given us 24 dBs of plus and minus gain for the Fusion and only 12 for the Neve, but that's how the Neve actually came with. I think it would be amazing if in an update, maybe they add an extra 12 dBs for the Neve section. But I noticed this is great for really driving the saturation. I know that the Fusion vintage drive is basically really popular for being super punchy, super aggressive, and you can even distort it like crazy. Whereas the Rupert Neve Design's MBT is actually more of a very precise mastering grade kind of tool where everything is super subtle, super soft, super gentle. And that's where they've actually given us their version of the silk saturators. Now, normally it is going to be red and blue, but we have dark and red with the included Zener drive. So for the MBT, this basically means that we get a really nice low frequency and low mid frequency enhancement with saturation that's very subtle and very mastering grade. Whereas the red is going to add some high frequency content and enhance it with some high frequency saturation. Zener drive is going to be a Zener style drive. It's basically color, and this is going to be how you're going to get a more aggressive saturation. Keep in mind that you're able to blend the three together and then even use the input drive to gain it more. But the MBT really wasn't ever designed to have that super aggressive edginess that the Fusion can really come up with. The next really big thing is that the Violet EQs are no longer stepped from 30, 50, 70, and 90 all the way to 8K, 12K, 16, and 20K. No, we're fully variable. And I think that's because the MBT is fully variable. You have 30 hertz all the way to 240, 3 kilohertz all the way up to 24K. Both of them are plus and minus 9 dBs. And for the Fusion, we have 30 to 90, 8K to 20, plus and minus 9 dBs. I will state that the Fusion has a much more aggressive sounding filter, and that's because in the real world, I've actually used both of them. The Fusion is really aggressive. The EQ, it sounds great, but it is definitely you do a couple of dBs and you hear it kind of thing. Whereas the MBT, super subtle, and they've done a great job of emulating that in the NFuse. The high frequency and low frequency EQ are very, very smooth on the end section of the NFuse. The compressor section for the NFuse has the MBT's color compressor. This is an opto compressor, so think of like an LA2A, but vastly improved. It's not as slow, and it has a lot more controls. You have a release control from fast all the way to slow. As you can see, slow is 1,550 milliseconds, fast is 100 milliseconds. You don't have any control for the attack because it is a photo-optical cell, but you do have the ability to add high ratio that is basically giving it a more aggressive compression. This is a smooth and gooey compressor. It kind of does more grab and hold versus the SSL's bus compressor, which is more snappy and aggressive. The sidechain high-pass filter here is from 20 hertz all the way to 350. Same for the SSL. And you have a makeup gain, a wet-dry control threshold, and a gain reduction meter. The stereo imaging for the Infuse is amazing because you get the stereo imager from the SSL Fusion, which has with control, you're able to reduce the stereo image or increase it. But you also have their space control. This is cool because it actually adds low frequency content that are normally kept in mono. It adds those frequencies into the side section of the mid-side matrix, giving a really interesting dense tone. And it's completely different than anything you've ever actually heard unless you've used it. Going to minimum is actually going to reduce it and thin out the side imaging, while maxing out is going to thicken it up. It's really cool. The MBT stereo imaging is probably one of the smoothest hardware stereo imagers I've ever heard. And the Infuse is doing a really good job of recreating it. Now, this will not fold down your stereo imaging. It will only enhance it, but you do have a high pass filter, which will actually prevent anything under the set frequency from being added to the stereo imaging. So anything under, let's say, 250 with how I set it to will not be enhanced, but anything over will. And if I set this all the way to 800, everything above 800 will be enhanced and anything under won't. You have a power section here, and then you have the ability to change your signal flow however you want by simply clicking on the little arrows here. This is a great way of controlling it. And then we have our classic oversampling, and we have our preset menu, undo, redo, A and B, and our resize control. Let's take a listen to how this thing sounds. I think it sounds pretty amazing. The first thing I want to do is actually show you how this is actually processing my tracks. So I have the Infuse across my mix buses, right? I'm using different versions of it everywhere, and I'm going to bypass every instance. Next, I'm going to play this, and I'm going to bring it back in, and we're just going to see how it sounds, basically being spread across my mix buses.
Look, I see you in the club taking shots, but girl, what about me and Dr. Fauci? Sometimes you're done at one strike, never mind three. I keep the picture in my ride to remind me that I've got something to lose. This ain't a science project, I've got nothing to prove. Please move about your business. How many times you gonna start the fight then play the victim? Don't even bother talking rights, you just obey the system. My take on wisdom is you earned it. That bridge should've...
Now, that's a pretty drastic difference. And I think what I want to do is go for something like the keys where I haven't done anything and show you how this can process things. So for these keys, I don't think I want an aggressive tone. So we're going to go for the end section, the Neve section, right? We're going to utilize the saturation, the EQ, the compressor, and the stereo imaging and really kind of dial this in. You'll hear how this is super subtle. So if we actually crank the input and output gain, it's very, very subtle. So we're going to focus on EQ and compression because the saturation really helps out on the vocals. So let's take a listen to this. It's a very smooth and subtle processor. Let's try the stereo imaging. Cool. That's added a nice little sense of depth. Let's take a listen to the drums. This is going to be a little bit more aggressive because we are going to be using the fusion side. So for this, we're going to probably utilize some saturation, EQ, and stereo imaging. Let's just do a reset on the settings and let's listen to the drums. Cool, let's go for some saturation. You see what I mean? The fusion side is really, really aggressive. And even if we switch to the Neve, we will still get a lot of saturation, but it will be nowhere near what we get for the fusion. So what I'm hearing is that the saturation right here, the dark and the red, especially with the Zener, even cranked, it's subtly enhancing it. You're getting some saturation, you're getting some snappiness and some body in the low end. We're also getting a little bit of an enhancement on the top end, but it's not as aggressive as the fusion. The fusion is basically just distorting. It's rock and roll. This is kind of like something that's great for like a jazz track or something, right? So I'm going to bypass it and turn it on and off. Listen to the sound of the hi-hat. Listen to how its excitement goes away. And listen to how the snap and body of the kick drum disappears. It's subtle, but it is there. Right? It's doing a pretty good job. We're going to go to the fusion and I'm going to bypass the compressor for now. And I think I'm going to stick with this because I like the aggression that I'm getting from it. Yeah, it's adding some excitement. Next, I'm going to use the EQ. This is the Violet EQ. This will give us 30 to 90 and 8K to 20K. Let's try the Neve. Listen to when I switch between it. The Neve's EQ, even set to the same frequency, is so much smoother, so much more subtle. I definitely think the SSL Fusion has a more aggressive EQ, and this is going to be perfect for enhancing frequencies. So I want to kind of tame the hi-hat and increase the low end. And then I'm going to go ahead and use the high-pass filter to roll off the sub-lows. Next, we have the compressor. This is the SSL bus compressor. We all know and love it. The Neve is going to be too subtle. I want something aggressive, but just for the sake of showing you, let's show you what it sounds like when we just crank this thing for the Neve. Very nice, very gooey. It has a very grabby sound, right? Let's go for the SSL. Next, we have the stereo imaging. This is going to be pretty cool. That's a pretty huge difference. Let's go for the vocals. I have the Neve. I'm using dark, red, equalizer, compression. We're using the whole thing. So let's go to the B section and let's just dial it in.
I see you in the club taking shots, but girl, what about me? And Dr. Fauci, sometimes you're done at one strike, never mind three. I keep the picture in my rod to remind me that I've got something to lose. This ain't a science project, I've got nothing to prove. Please move about your business. How many times you gonna start the fight then play the victim? Don't even bother talking rights, you just obey the system. My take on wisdom is you earn it. That bridge should have burned it.
So it's added a little bit of excitement, and it's kind of adding a little bit of compression because it's saturating. It's doing a little bit of control. And let's check the equalizer out. I want to add some sheen to it, but not a lot of it.
I see you in the club taking shots, but girl, what about me? And Dr. Fauci, sometimes you're done at one strike, never mind three. I keep the picture in my rod to remind me that I've got something to lose. This ain't a science project, I've got nothing to prove. Please move about your business. How many times you gonna start the fight then play the victim? Don't even bother talking rights, you just obey the system.
Cool. Next, let's use some compression. We're going to make this relatively fast of a release.
I see you in the club taking shots, but girl, what about me? And Dr. Fauci, sometimes you're done at one strike, never mind three. I keep the picture in my rod to remind me that I've got something to lose. This ain't a science project, I've got nothing to prove. Please move about your business. How many times you gonna start the fight then play the victim? Don't even bother talking rights, you just obey the system. My take on wisdom is you earn it. That bridge should have burned it. Find every table in the party just to turn it. Be a rebel with I see you in the club taking shots, but girl, what about me? And Dr. Fauci, sometimes you're done at one strike, never mind three. I keep the picture in my rod to remind me that I've got something to lose. This ain't a science project, I've got nothing to prove. Please move about your business. How many times you gonna start the fight then play the victim? Don't even bother talking rights, you just obey the system. My take on wisdom is you earn it. That bridge should have burned it. Find every table in the party.
I like that. I'm going to bring back a little bit of that high frequency enhancement. It's kind of clearing it up and making it a little bit denser. Let's see what happens if we just go ahead and throw in our master bus and see if we can do some finalized processing. Now for this, we're going to go for like a blend, right? We're just going to listen to the whole thing and see what we can do.
I see you in the club taking shots, but girl, what about me? And Dr. Fauci, sometimes you're done at one strike, never mind three. I keep the picture in my rod.
Now this is an instance where you can really hear it. You could really hear the silk saturation. It's just adding a lot of depth and body. So we're going to use a little bit of this, a little bit of this.
I see you in the club taking shots, but girl, what about me? And Dr. Fauci, sometimes you're done at one strike, never mind three. I keep the picture in my rod to remind me that I've got something to lose. This ain't a science project, I've got nothing to prove.
And this is where the compressor is just not doing it for me. I want something punchy, something that's going to give me a really nice sense of aggression and punch.
I see you in the club taking shots, but girl, what about me? And Dr. Fauci, sometimes you're done at one strike, never mind three. I keep the picture in my rod to remind me that I've got something to lose. This ain't a science project, I've got nothing to prove. Please move about your business. How many times you gonna start the fight then play the victim? Don't even bother talking rights, you just obey the system. My take on wisdom is you earn it. That bridge should have burned it. Find every table in the party just to turn it. Be a rebel without a cause and you...
Okay, let's bypass it.
I see you in the club taking shots, but girl, what about me? And Dr. Fauci.
That's doing a pretty impressive amount of changes. Let's bypass it completely. This is going to be all instances bypassed.
I see you in the club taking shots, but girl, what about me and Dr. Fauci? Sometimes you're done at one strike, never mind three. I keep the picture in my ride to remind me that I've got something to lose. This ain't a science project, I've got nothing to prove. Please move about your business. How many times you gonna...
That is pretty impressive. Throwing it across all of your mix buses allows you to kind of be able to have a little bit here and there, and then you see what happens when you add it all up. I actually prefer to do this method when I'm using plugins just because you're able to do more fine-tuned work. I actually have rented out an MBT because I love it, and it's just really expensive. I can't afford it. And this is doing a really, really good job of very closely recreating the tones and the character that I get from that. The SSL Fusion side, I think, is actually very, very good. I love the stereo imager. I think the compressor is better than what is actually there in the original unit, and the saturation is fantastic. I think that's going to be it for this video. This is Jerry Mateo with In the DAW. I will leave a link down below where you can check out Kiive Audio's Infuse, and I'll see you guys next time.